You do scroll in our class or the other class?
Is it recording?
Do video camera in our class or the other class?
I videotape one pre-algebra class and algebra class.
Is it recording right now?
Yes, it is.
It is recording.
A function, for your information, is nothing more than an equation. We'll talk about the definition, what the real definition of a function is as we progress through the year. But whenever you see the word function, we're talking about an equation. If it says write a function or write a rule, it wants an equation. Okay? Alright, next thing, domain. You need to memorize this. It's the input. It is the independent variable. It is all the x values in layman's terms. X values. So I'm talking about the domain. If I'm talking about the independent variable, I'm talking about x and all the values that we attribute to x.
Wait, what if it's not x? It's a different variable. Is it still?
I'm going to get to how you can tell.
Alright.
Okay? Because that's why this is one of the most difficult lessons, I think. But if you can grasp all this and memorize these things, you won't have any problems. Okay? The range. What do you think the range is?
The y.
Thank you. It is the outputs. What you get when you plug something in for x. It is the dependent variable. Independent and dependent variable is extremely important that you know which one's which. If you're plugging in values for x, doesn't y depend on what you plugged in? That's why it's called the dependent variable. These are the y values. All right. Very important. To be a function, Fn is function, there can be no duplicate x values. Just a second to catch up. These are things you need to have memorized. I am not going to put that on the test, but these words and this understanding will be on the test. I'll be asking you questions about the domain. If you don't know what the domain is, you can't answer it, okay? I'm not going to ask you to write down the definition of domain. I'm not going to ask you to explain what it means to be a function, okay? Everybody caught up? All right. First example. Mapping. How information is displayed sometimes looks like this, where this is your input and this is your output, or x's and y's. Okay? 0, 1, 2, and 3. And in the output we get 1, 3, and 5. Now, mapping is where you take your x values and you draw an arrow to the y value that it's connected to. So for instance, if I gave you this information, 0, 1, 1, oops, I should look at this. 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, 5. What are those? What do you call those? Ready? Coordinates. That's basically what we're looking at, guys. Kind of getting into graphing x and y, coordinate plane. That's what this is all about. And now you're not just going to graph it, you're going to grow some understanding of what it is you're graphing. Make a little more sense. Alright, so I will draw an arrow from 0 to 1. I will draw an arrow from 1 to 1. 2 to 3. Do you all get it?
Wait, why do
Why does this one, these two go to this one? Okay, because there's two y values for each of those x values. The same y value for each of those. It so happens to be that way. It doesn't always, it's not always like that. Just in this example it is. Ready?
Are we going to grab it?
Not yet. Not yet. Okay, so this is a function. An example of not a function. Let's see here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 5, 6. 0 goes to 1, 1 goes to 3, 2 goes to 5 and 6, and 3 goes to 6.
Oh, yeah.
It's messed up.
I remember this from last year.
Okay. The definition I gave you that you needed to understand for what a function was in your notes. You cannot have duplicate x values. You have two x values here that are the same. If I write this in coordinate form, what do I get? I get 0, 1, 1, 3, 2, 5, and 2, 6. Look, you now have duplicate x values. That's what that means. There's two arrows coming from the same x value. This is not a function. Okay? All right, now what does that mean to you? Nothing. We'll get, as the year progresses, we'll start to understand functions a little bit more. But how can you identify what a function is? This is the baby steps. Okay? I'm trying to show you the shortcut real quickly of how you figure it out. So memorize how you do that in mapping. Okay? All right. Example 2. Make a table for a function. So here's the function y equals 5x. Let's catch it. We're going to make a table for this function with this domain information. -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So what are those values? They're all x values. There's 5 problems here. Now I want you to tell me what y is for each of these values of x's. So technically there's 5 problems. But we're going to make a table to describe it. Okay? This is x, this is y. Here are your x values. It's okay if you do it vertically, that's fine. I'd almost prefer it to be vertical, but you're going to see it horizontally in your homework today. So, what do you get for y when x is -2? Thank you. Sophie, when x is -1? Awesome. When x is 0, negative. Or Hunter. Yeah, and then 5, and then 10. All right. So if they ask you for what the range is, you would write it like this. Exactly the way I'm writing it. If they wanted the range given the domain, that's the answer you would get. But for this example, they just wanted a table. I just wanted a table. Can I go on? Anybody still writing? Okay, last example. Example 3. Write a rule for a function. So now, given the table, can you give me the equation? That's really what it's asking for. So here we go. Here's a table. You're going to have your inputs. What's another name for inputs? X values. Your dependent numbers. Oops. 0, 1, 2, and 3 is what I have up here. What they got when they plugged these in was 0, 1, 4, and 9. Now that's the problem. That's exactly how it's going to look in your book. They'll just give you different numbers. Now here's what you need to do. I know you guys have done this in the past, but really what you need to be asking yourself when you get ready to write a rule for this is, what is happening to my inputs to get these outputs? That's the first question you should ask. Okay, so you need to write that down right now. So what is happening to the x values to get the y values? Cameron?
Each x value is being squared.
It's being squared. So now, most of the time you guys have only had to come up with some values. You've never had to write letters down so much. In this class, it's algebra. We want to get from your brain down to paper what you did. So, what's another word for input? Or what is it? X. What did you do to x? What did Cameron say?
Squared.
Squared it. And what did we get?
Y.
Thank you. There's your rule. Sometimes you're only adding a number, sometimes you're going to subtract. Okay? Your assignment, page 38, 3 to 22. If you miss it, you can check it out on YouTube.